Genius last year down there.
Yeah, our partnership with Hamilton is definitely growing and strengthening. So too many partners across and too many clusters to mention them all. I mentioned a few of them. Certainly Hamilton's one of them. There's a question over here. Cheryl.
Yes, hi Jason, it's Cheryl Peters. In addition to my role in Mississauga, I'm also director with the Economic Developers Council of Ontario. So I'm just going to raise awareness that you can develop a partnership with EDCO to do outreach to the economic developers across Ontario. The membership is about 700 people. So if you want to get into the tentacles on the ground in those communities as to who's out there, what's out there, representatives like myself and Maria and the other economic developers that come here can be there to assist you on that. And the second thing, in listening to this morning to the challenges faced in workforce development and life sciences in Ontario, it parallels a lot of other industries across Ontario. And in addition to my role as a director with EDCO, your wife Laura is going to be on one of my panels in a couple of weeks. I'm the 2014 conference chair. And on February 4th, there's going to be a workforce development roundtable, and we're hoping to get representatives from around the province to come together to develop a unified strategy for workforce development. And I see value in someone from Life Sciences Ontario participating in that. If there's any other HR recruitment people in this room, other people of interest to come out and try and solve this on an Ontario basis, we welcome your input and participation in that. So I'll leave that for you for your consideration, and if there are any other questions, please let me know.
Thanks for that, Cheryl. And if you haven't connected yet with Rob Henderson at BioTalent, I'd strongly recommend that as well. But we'd love to participate.
I participated in those workforce development programs in the past.
Is there a question over here?
Sue, what do you keep?
Somebody says you can't talk more than 30 seconds.
Yeah.
Hi, it's Sharon Mulligan. I'm actually in the executive search business, and I just want to go back to the important stuff in terms of students, because I'm coaching a lot of friends' kids, and if you want your students or recent graduates to get jobs, the jobs are out there. The issue is that we have a young generation of graduates who really love technology, so it's competitive to get into the top universities. They graduate, and then they go, here I am. Where's the job? And so they sit behind the computer applying to different things. You don't have the experience, but companies will give you a chance if you've got positive attitude, you've got energy, you're willing to work. And I talk to so many kids, I ask them what their search strategy is, and they're just applying and applying online. You've got to get out to networking events. Like I look at this event, there's only like 2 students that I see here. And so it's not going to be sitting there competing with thousands of other resumes in terms of the jobs. I think that's a key issue that I wanted to mention. And number 2, go in. Like, this is a true case study. A young man went to volunteer at a small pharma company. They loved him, brought him on as a summer student, and he did a really great job. Then he went and worked in another co-op. This is Waterloo Co-op Science. Did another job in Campbell's, didn't like it, came back to his old company. They really liked him, gave him the breath of row, and right now he's doing his 8-month co-op at Harvard Medical School. And they said that the work he got, it's actually Dalton Pharma, was at the level of a graduate.
So that's
true story.
Great to hear. One of the things that we do, I'm going to look over at Andrew over here. Yeah, I caught you looking at your BlackBerry, Andrew. One of the reasons Andrew is our Volunteer of the Year this year, congratulations, Andrew, is because, and that's well deserved, is because of the work he does on our pub night networking events with students. And one of the things that Andrew does is encourages students to come out to these events and interact with industry. But Andrew takes a next step, and it's exactly what you're saying, Sharon. He talks to students about how to interact with business professionals, which is where they need a lot of assistance. So we have volunteers like Andrew that are actively doing that. We do try to encourage those students to network and how to network.
Hi, Peter Henderson here from Ideovation. I work primarily in the agri-food and clean tech sectors in the area of marketing strategies of helping companies grow. I think LSO is a phenomenal organization. The event that you hosted in the fall that John coordinated was just awesome. It was incredible. I think next year or later this year when it's held, it would be great to see certainly double the size in terms of representatives there. I'd like to pick up on a couple of points. I think increasing membership, I'd love to contribute to that process. I'm just curious, a raise of hands as to how many in the room here are in the agri-food sector, and I imagine not too many.
Vanessa, you could.
Yes, of course, Carol, yeah. You know, if that's an important priority for LSO, why perhaps the challenge, could there be 10 more representatives here this time next year, or 15? Maybe the location is an issue for that sector to be here. But I really enjoy being a member of LSO. I would really like to understand how it is, one, I could contribute more to help the organization grow and prosper, and set the right policies. A little bit greater clarity around the role of the agri-food or functional food sector, which I think is extremely important, and that's why I'm here, would be helpful. I'd love to be participating on any working groups that might help define that. So my question is, can you provide an update on the human health cluster and what's happening with the Toronto Region Board of Trade? And the Ontario Chamber of Commerce, who's going to be around that table? So what exactly is being defined? What are some of the policies that are being sought that relate to LSO? And then one final comment, and that is, I think in terms of the vision for LSO, in terms of inviting and encouraging greater membership, I'd love to see a lot more talk about the networking, collaboration, and innovation component, and how we could bring new members in. I'll stop there. Thank you.
So I really appreciate those comments, and certainly, this was actually a question I had on my prepared questions for John about focusing on growing our membership in the ag food space. Before I hand it off to John to make some comments on that, what I would like to say about it is that we met with Deb Stark, the Deputy Minister of Ag Food, last year. It was a great meeting, a lot of receptivity of engaging the ag food sector. And another interesting meeting we had was with Lauren Hepworth of Crop Life, and we did that in collaboration with Nancy Tout from Syngenta, who also sits on our board, and Syngenta has joined us as a corporate member this year. So we are growing and developing within the agri-food space, but it's still an area that we need to build up better representation. And as you said, geography is part of that, and that's linked to the outreach. Going back to your questions around the Toronto Board of Trade and the OCC roundtable, the Toronto Board of Trade is going to be around that roundtable, as is many of the organizations across Ontario and nationally, and company representatives as well. We've targeted senior officials, or the OCC's targeted senior officials for that. But what's really interesting that I think you'd be interested in is in the conversations we had with Lauren Hepworth from Crop Life Canada. Wow, that guy is brilliant. That's all I can say. He sat down with an hour and a half with us, and we talked about fragmentation in our sector and how we can better engage the agri-food community. He says, you know what? We were kind of in the same boat as you guys about 5 to 7 years ago. He says, let me show you something. And he pulled out a document, and it was called Grow Canada's Vision 2015, which they published 5, 7 years ago. And it was exactly what I had in my mind envisioned that could come out of this OCC roundtable. So I forwarded it on to the OCC, and basically what it was a very simple document that basically says the agri-food sector, these are the top priorities from a policy perspective. These are the values that we add within the economic framework, and this is how government can support this space. And it was endorsed by all the major players within that space. That's a very powerful message, a very powerful document. He actually said it was a game changer for them. So that's something that we've taken as a model that we want to move forward with the OCC. So maybe that will give you some more perspective on what we're trying to drive towards.
Can I just add something before John talks about agri-food? That actually, the Toronto Board of Trade Initiative is an interesting initiative from a life science advocacy point of view, because when they started that process, and I was involved at the beginning, they wanted to make a life science cluster. And when we talked to them and listened to them, they're not interested in making a life science cluster as we define life science in Life Science Ontario, but includes all of this. They are really interested in a health science cluster for the GTA, right, to set, so that took several months to switch from a life science cluster to a, so that the definition of life science has remained to be difficult, because then when we're going in advocating for different things, one person's going in to advocate for life science, and they're not actually talking about life sciences. We define it, they're talking about health. And other people are going to talk about life science and including the full breadth. So I think it is important to have those groups at the table so that when OCC is looking at a life science cluster, it includes them, but it's not only health. And when we're looking at a health cluster, we're talking specifically about what you need to generate to bring the multinational pharma or the Clinical Trials Ontario to a space. Those are two different things that can exist in a same environment way and with a unified voice if it's done the right way. But I know LSO has struggled a little bit with this. It is an issue in government sometimes because some people equate life science with health, not everybody, but some people do, and it's a constant, when we're talking about life science, as an LSO organization, we have to be very clear we mean all the sectors and not one or the other. And so I think that that's something that we need to be very conscious of all the time.
John, did you want to add a comment on growing our representation in the agri-food space?
Yeah, the ag space is not just farmers. And so that's what I think a lot of people in this room need to understand. There's so many opportunities within agriculture. Agriculture, food, bioeconomy, they're quite large. When you look at the bioeconomy side of things, we're talking about bioenergy, we're talking about biofibers, so something into the auto sector. You're talking about biochemical developments or petroleum replacements. So it becomes a much larger play. Within the ag sector, the pure ag sector, you've got plant agriculture, animal agriculture, microbiota type agriculture, and then you've got the whole food business, which is one of the largest sectors within the province. So for us to reach out to the diversity that exists within agriculture is a daunting task because there are so many players. Within Ontario, there's probably 250 agricultural organizations representing other horticulture, grain farmers, livestock, or individual components within it. So what we have to do is we have to have a very concise story. We have to have a really good value proposition for the agricultural community. We have to have communications that will resonate with the sector outside the GTA. And this organization, it morphed from the Toronto Biotechnology Initiative to the Biotechnology Initiative to Life Sciences Ontario. And we made a significant conscious effort to reach out to other areas across the province. We have cross memberships with Ontario Agri-Food Technologies, Wealth, Ontario Food and Vegetable Growers Association, and others, but it's really only a start. When you look in the pharma business, you've got the major players. Well, those major players are the same players in the crop protection business. So when you talk about Lauren Hepworth and what he does, the science involved with crop protection products is very, very similar to that involved with pharmaceutical products. Even the path to market, the path through the regulatory system, all of that, it's all the same. They have to do all the same talks. In fact, they have to do more things like environmental toxicology beyond what the pharma guys have to do. So for us to reach out to the Bayers, the BASFs, the DuPonts, the Dows, these are all major players in the crop world. We have to get a start. We've got that start now with Syngenta. So we expect that we'll see more happening in that space.
We've got time for a few more questions. I saw there was one here, Brian. Sorry, we'll come back to you.
Yeah. Yes. About opportunities for students, I just want to say I am a mentor for the University of Ottawa Telfer School of Management, and they have started a program of entrepreneurship for their business graduates, and they are working on with 16 other universities. There are 17 universities in Canada that have schools of business and management. It's no more about training them to get a job; it's make your own job. So maybe that's something we could also consider. I want to pick up on some points that John was just making. It has been my question of approaching the Ministry of Agriculture and Food. What is the life sciences story on food? As John was saying, it's very diverse. And if you're representing only the people who are involved in genetically modified crops, you might be then sending an impression other than what you want to convey. It is very diverse, and they don't have monopoly on science. Even organic food is a science. It's not perfect yet, but it's a science. So the question I would have to the LSO people is, what is the message you want to take to agriculture and food, about food, and your position in food?
It's a great question. John, you want to?
Yeah,
Take
the position is about innovation, diversification, commercialization, trying to support policies that support the entrepreneur, investment, and they're all really, Carol, they're all really the same policies that fit across the other areas. The food sector, I don't know, for those who may not know it, is as large, food processing sector is as large as the auto sector in this province, right? It's just got way more players than what the auto sector does. So we have not, as LSO, done a great job at reaching out to the food processing sector. Although we have had Steve Peters at some of our meetings, he's the head of the Alliance of Ontario Food Processors. We have
Dave Smart.
well, Dave Smartin, who's the with the Ivy School at Western on agri-food policy. We've also had Maple Leaf involved with a few things. So there are some, and I'll call them dribs and drabs because it really hasn't been a coordinated focus on the food sector, and certainly that's one that we do need to do.
So two things come to mind too in terms of the value proposition, and it really is what LSO's value proposition is to everyone, is the power of a unified and aligned voice. It has a different meaning, I think, for different folks. So when we were talking with Deb Stark, I think one of the things she was interested in was connectivity, right? Connectivity into the GTA, into organizations and multinationals in the pharma industry, because there's tons of opportunities for areas of convergence, right? And as John was pointing out, one of the challenges I think in the agri-food sector is that they're huge. They're an enormous economic powerhouse. They're an innovative, science-based industry, but they don't necessarily have that reputation or that perception within a policy framework. So I think that's something where we could add value in terms of bringing them into the umbrella of life sciences as well. So I think that's part of that value proposition. There was a question here. I wanted to take that. Brian, this young lady had her hand up for some time.
Yeah, I actually have a remark, because it's not just with new students who have trouble getting in the field and everything, but it's also with very experienced people. I've seen, I'm actually finding myself in that situation, but I've seen many other people who have a lot of experience, and at some point at U of T, for instance, where I've been working, they have many-year contracts and things like that. And once that period is up, it's like sometimes it's very hard for them to find some new position and things like that. And I actually have met a lot of people who are worried about their future, and they say, oh, maybe I should go into a different field and everything. So that's some of the things I have seen.
And actually, you're spot on, and that's I mentioned the labor market study by BioTalent Canada. Their previous one that they did, one of the most disturbing stats that I read was that 50% of the people leaving the biotech sector were leaving them for jobs outside of the biotech sector. That was a really disturbing trend, and that was back in 2007. But I personally experienced that with a lot of my colleagues and friends. I had colleagues that were chemistry graduates that became police officers and chefs, right? So those trends are disturbing, and again, it comes back to the policy gap and developing. Yes, a chef.
Chef and chemistry.
He is a chemist.
Chef and chemist. Well, we're kind of like chemists. We're kind of like chefs. We like mixing stuff up. So yeah, it is a challenge, and it's more than just the recent graduates. You're right.
Jason?
Okay.
Oh, I have a question. It's good to see that there's a focus here on engaging CEOs, and I think there's a lot of discussion about strengthening the voice with respect to policies, regulatory challenges, and also sharing innovation by doing that. My question is, a lot of the CEOs are their attention is on the day-to-day challenges,
on addressing needs of global, their particular sector. So the question is, how do you change that mindset to look at this broader picture and the value of that? So that's one question. The second is, how are you going to measure success with the strat plan?
Okay, those are two very good questions, and the first one's probably easier, the easiest one to answer, and it's actually Paul Lucas is my answer. Paul Lucas is our president and chair. He was the CEO of GSK for many years, and you're absolutely right, Doreen. Some CEOs really get it. They get that they can't operate in a box, that they're part of a larger community, and what benefits the community can raise the water level for all. There are others that don't. There are others that are solely focused on, short-term thinking in terms of their specific company, their specific needs. So, having somebody like Paul that's, very well respected within the space, leveraging his connections and also his view on what it means to contribute to a life sciences community in Ontario, I think is very important. So we need to leverage that and engage CEOs on things that can benefit them in terms of, if they're multinationals, positioning with their head offices, if they're homegrown companies, how can they continue to develop, reach export markets, and how can we work together to facilitate the things that are important to them. So we do have to add value, but having somebody as a champion like Paul, I think, is very powerful in that messaging with CEOs. In terms of measuring success with our strat plan, it's the same as, I think, when we look back on our original strategy. You look at the priorities that we've set out as an organization in terms of advocacy, in terms of adding value to our members, and our sustainability. They're all measurable outcomes, right? We have to look at advocacy and things like common vision. Are we able to move that forward and bring some alignment to the sector? I think that'd be a huge win for us if we can do that. So there are very specific and tangible initiatives that we want to deliver on. Basically we will continually evaluate and come back and look at how we're delivering on these aspects. And then the other piece is engaging our membership at events such as this through various surveys and feedback and opportunities to hear from our members. I know we're running out of time here, but maybe one more question if there's any.
So just with the CEOs, we just have to understand what their limitations are too, because they don't have a lot of time.
But some of them clearly want to look at the raft of lifetime achievement winners,
Yeah.
some of which were CEOs, and they don't get that award. It's a good segue into the galas. They don't get that award because because of what they did for their company per se, but what they've done for the space. So, but it has to be value add for them. So sitting them in the room for all day and chatting about the weather's not going to help. So
And,
we have
and
to
they're
do
already
something.
involved in some of their own associations like biotech, the medic, the agriculture.
Right, so that's a good point. So looking for synergy. People already in the room. Can you do two things at once? All of those things are important to make sure that you don't put an extra burden on. For sure.
So I think we're gonna stop there, and if you could join me in thank our board members, Alice and John. And just bear with me, I just have a few announcements to make. Obviously our upcoming breakfast networking events, we'll check our website February 20th. We will be having our breakfast, our February breakfast. April 4th is our annual general meeting, and that will be at E&Y. And then the other events you'll find on our events calendar. Our Gala Awards, Allison mentioned that, thank you, are taking place on February 26th. This is a terrific event. We're looking at about 400 of the top stakeholders in life sciences, so it is going to be the place to be. If you haven't got your tickets, you can go online and get your tickets and tables and their sponsorship opportunities. Pub nights, hang out with Andrew. That's what we should call them, the Hang Out with Andrew night. No, they're great events. We've got a new venue at Brookfield Place, Marche Restaurant. It's kind of like an indoor patio. It's really cool. It's a great venue, an opportunity just to interact on a social basis. So great opportunity. That's going to be taking place on February 4th after our board meeting. So hopefully lots of our board members will go and join us for a drink. And then finally, I want to mention biotransfer. This is an event that has been rescheduled. Originally it was in January. It's now rescheduled to March 18th. So make a note of that in the calendar. It's a great event. I believe it's usually held in Quebec. It's held in Toronto this year. It's really about showcasing commercializable technologies and connecting academic researchers and institutional researchers with industry. So great event. Mark your calendars for that one, please. And finally, just to thank you to our platinum sponsors, RX&D, City of Toronto, Pasteur, Richmond Hill, and Ernst & Young, our silver sponsors. And thank you all for attending. And thank you to Faskins for hosting us. Tracy, thank you so much. Great venue.